If you were a mad scientist with absolutely no moral or ethical dilemmas that might trouble you, what would be an experiment you'd like to conduct to better understand humanity? Kidnap politicians. Drug them into a highly suggestive state. Subject them to various scenarios. WW3. They become president. Unlimited money and power at their fingertips, etc., and see which ones are truthful as to their aims, which are moral, and which are corrupt and evil. Televise the results. Sounds like a good Black Mirror episode, as long as no pigs are involved. On the other hand, maybe that episode needed even more pigs. Put a newborn into an environment consisting of male and female adults, parents, 2 older adults, grandparents, and a caregiver, babysitter, young adult, with occasional presence interaction with others in a community setting. The difference between this and a normal world is that each person speaks a different language. Mom only speaks Italian, dad only Chinese, babysitter Farsi, etc. All of them understand all the languages used by others in the experiment, but they never speak in anything except their one assigned language. It is important that there be no bias assignment. That is, all women do not use a language in the same language group. The same goes for tall, short people, kindly, strict people, etc. Since there are approx. 200 sufficiently distinct languages, you can create 40 such groups in the community. Each person in a core group, parents, grands, babysitter, assists in coaxing, teaching the infant to speak. Each using their personal language, that is, the baby will be expected to learn 5 different words for spoon, food, etc. At about age 2-1-2, the children begin to interact with each other. Observe each one's preferences and how, if, when they teach other children their words for things. As the children reach puberty, start reducing the number of adults so that by the time the kids are in their teens, it is just them with no outside influences. How does their splintered languages affect their social order? Do they develop a universal language, etc., etc., etc.? I would put all political parties into their own individual societies and government. It would be interesting to see what new ideas people come up with to hate each other in these closed systems. That is actually a great one. Breeding experiment time. Brain wipe about 25 adults, strip them and dump them in a blank room. Food will be provided at 8 hours time intervals. This sounds a lot like my Minecraft manual Villager Breeder. I'd call getting real-life mending books a success. What if you raise a child pretty normally, except instead of talking to them normally and teaching them to speak normally, you had only sing at them, like they think that is how humans communicate all the time? Their life is one big musical number. I wonder what kind of effect that could have on someone, especially if you tried to integrate them with a regular population. Like, do they adapt? But suddenly when they are emotional they break into song. This was just some crazy idea I had a while back while watching The Magicians, and the episode where they get stuck in this universe where they have to be entertaining and sing or else they die. Fuse shark and human DNA with the aim of allowing humans to regrow teeth. I am sure this is not even possible, but time to try. I was thinking octopus. Graft octopus arms onto a human. Or vice versa. I am sure some Japanese-born studio is already looking into this. Genetically try to modify human cells in a way that the cells would have the DNA of a plant, where, instead of oxidizing glucose from outside, they can have cells with chlorophyll to produce their own glucose. The blood also should be adapted to have more affinity to CO2 than O2. And for anyone with more questions, yes, they might have a very degraded digestive system which is just for extra macro and micronutrients and water. Like in plants. You have thought about this before, have not you? Do not look in his basement. Time for the Hunger Games. Breed humans for specific traits. I wonder how tall small I can make a human. Or a body part: nose, hands, feet, ears, before things start breaking. If I knew how things worked, maybe try adding new features in. Obviously I would have some mad scientist sons and daughters to continue my work. Where artificial human evolution could take a while. This sort of thing is mentioned in Dune. But more so to breed a perfect human. Bleh. Perfection is boring. I want to see the extremes. Isolate babies and let them live together with no other human interaction to see how they will communicate as they grow up. Without human interaction, babies shrivel up and die. Not when robots are involved. Even when robots are involved, they will just stop growing if they are not touched. Form a bunch of new societies completely unimpacted by current societies. I am sick and tired of all this, and it is just a societal norm stuff. If we get enough societies to form by themselves, we could easily figure out if certain things are actually because of society, or if it is because of other things. Stuff like a popular gendered toys that way because of society or because the genders naturally gravitate towards those toys. I doubt it would lead to useful results. We know how society naturally arose the first time. It was bloody and superstitious, with lots of rape. I do not think anybody is going to argue that we should go back to that. My lawyer has informed me that I am not allowed to answer such questions at this time. Put 1,000 people in a room that would be fairly easy to escape via organized force, and tell them one person would be killed at random every hour. Or they could kill one person of their choice every 2 hours. But they have to do it themselves. I did be interested to see if they did work together to organize a rebellion, or turn on each other, or impotently await their fate. Raise children in isolation from no knowledge of the other gender. Later, after puberty, introduce them to each other without any form of context or explanation. See what happens. I think this one might be my favorite. That would be really interesting to see. I did give myself $1 billion, and just see what happens. Isolate and study psychopaths, sociopaths, etc. Gene testing, brain scans, tracking their offspring heavily. Utilize all sorts of drugs and psychotherapies to see if it is possible to permanently engender more empathy and restructuring of the personality. If the answer is no, methods for how to easily detect them on the mass scale and tag them. ISNT psychopathy just asked. I would like to see the US split in half, political left versus right. Possibly even splitting into 4 parts. Far left, center right, far right. Before the split, each of the new nations would draft new constitutions based on their ideologies, and our current government would fund relocating anyone that wished to move to where they feel would suit them best. Companies' headquarters would be given relocation assistance as well. From there we see who prospers. Interesting. I actually really like that. Especially since it is not just right and left, but far and center. Would really be interesting to watch. I'd have 2 islands. And I'd have at least 10 people on each island. One island would have religious people, and the other would have non-religious atheist people. I'd do this to see if religion really is a problem in human society. It is not religion. We human are basically animal. We can fight for anything. If we have same religion, we will fight for language, color, etc. We could learn a ton about the human brain and how to fix it if we could just damage specific parts of it and see what goes wrong. Electroshock therapy in a nutshell. Just look at what they can do in China. I think South Korea is pretty liberal with those laws too. There was a study in China recently that took human DNA and spliced it into macaque embryos. It was considered unethical by US standards. But that does not mean we were not curious to see the results. LOL. So what was the result of this study in China? Do not leave us hanging. They spliced in human genes that govern neuron development, trying to see if they can make smarter monkeys. Something like 90% died. Of the ones that survived had delayed development compared to a normal monkey. They surmised the slow development was more in line with the humans. They also think that the slower speed of development is what makes humans more intelligent. See what happens to society if all current politicians and the wealthiest 5% worldwide suddenly died, asking with all of their heirs. That is a good one. That'd kill many executives in government and business. It would depend on we divided it all up and who got promoted. How many soft punches in the left leg would it take to kill someone? These are the big questions. Probably less than most people would think. Enough repeated trauma will eventually cause issues. You know how people say that babies are capable of learning any language? Well, take a baby. Newborn. Never really had any human interaction. Put them in a community type setup where there are only cats or dogs, I guess would work too, and see if they learn cat language. Like iKit is probably not really a language. But is the baby learns what all of the social types of meows, how to live in a cat society, and even if they would be accepted. Then, after they live their life until about teenage years, then get released back into normal human society, and see how they interact, if they can learn English, how they treat people, etc. If anyone has seen an anime named Sao, basically a guy traps 10,000 people in a virtual reality for 2 years and a different guy later on makes a full AI world where he has 4 real people to start off the world and then leaves the AI in a virtual way for ages to see what they do. Some of it is interesting and very scientific, and I think if we could do this in real life it would be very interesting. Sounds like a Westworld spin-off. Cast a wide net and find the most average person possible. Average height, build, intelligence, athleticism, ambition, etc. Clone them 300 times and give 100 clones to a poor families, 100 to middle-class families, and 100 to a wealthy families. Screen the families to ensure each is effectively functional, loving, and supportive. After 10 years, check the children's academic performance. Then at 14 and 18. At 25, check their status. Then again at 35. I want to know to what degree, if any, a child's family's economic security affects a person's chances of success. Genetically splice humans and birds so we could have wings. Let me know if you ever get that done. Take a 4-year-old child and place it in the woods. No predators to kill it and no humans nearby. After 10 years or so, I would check to see what it had become. A tree. Well, first I would recognize the power of being able to conduct such experiments in private and build a utopia where the world's best and brightest can pursue their ideas without restraint. The GovTS of the world probably would not like that. So we will have to build our society somewhere difficult to reach. Find and attack. Bottom of the ocean. Sounds perfect. Make sure you recognize the limits of freedom, old sport. I did bring back the woolly mammoth and set several of them loose in Central Park. Add some Smilodons, Intelligence and Spinosaurus to the party. Then we are talking. Send something small, organic, and resilient, like a water bear, to one of the more habitable moons and watch for evolution. The only drawback there is the time it would take for any noticeable changes to manifest. Oh yeah. My experiment would require generations of mad scientists to sign up. But I am obsessed with biological evolution, especially on the macro level. I was really bummed out when I learned they tried to make things center space as sterile as possible to prevent the possibility. So it has always stuck with me as my pet and ethical experiment. I did drop an elephant off the Empire State Building. This is ideally what I was looking for. GMO humans. We have no modern need for myostatin. I just want to pump you up. I would take 2 identical twins test tube babies preferably. Have them birthed in separate but totally equal environments. If possible. I would like to control everything down to the molecular level in terms of what they're exposed to inside and outside the womb. Their rooms would be identical. They would be fed identical food by robots that behaved identically. They would also be taught and socialized by these robots. They would experience literally the exact same stimulus for 16 years. Down to the microsecond. Eventually, when they turned 16, they would be taught to play chess again identically. When it came time for their first game, the robot would make the first move and both robots would follow the exact same Minimax algorithm for move selection. The question was, they play 2 identical games of chess. In broader terms, does free will actually exist? Or is our behavior the output of a function defined by our genetics experiences? Personally, I do not believe in free will and think they would play the same game of chess. This would be extremely hard to do, but extremely interesting. More to the point, which opening would you teach them? I really wouldn't delve into any specific opening lines. Just teach them the rules of the game and then see if they respond identically. It would be almost impossible to pull off, but the whole experiment is theoretically possible. would just require a massive investment and obviously is extremely unethical, immoral. I'd basically be hacked from the OA kill and resuscitate subjects to study what happens with death, the afterlife. I will throw a kid into a jungle with only monkeys and only intervene in a time of need. I want to see how exactly the child will turn out and let them live in the jungle forever. I also want to see whether the level of intelligence will help the kid become leader one day. A practical one would be a multi-generational double-blind nutrition study. But one I have been thinking about in recent days is pulling off an animal uplift. Taking an existing fairly smart animal like acropods or octopuses and then selectively breeding them in or genetically modifying them for greater and greater intelligence until we get them to or above human intelligence levels. Depending on just how mad you are feeling, you could even do big cats or bears. But that is Planet of the Apes kinds of stupid. I would breed humans to figure out the best way to create redheads. Hot redheads or Chuckies. Hot redheads, of course. I did capture as many people as possible and place them in a cell. Provide food, drink, entertainment, everything to make them comfortable. I did also place a big shiny red button in the cell. I would not tell them what it does. I will just tell them not to press it. The red button will actually do nothing. But there'd be a counter in an observation room to see how many times each button had been pressed. I did monitor each person closely to see their motivations for pushing the red button. The whole point of the exercise is not to see who will listen to orders, or to see who can function without society. It will be to figure out what makes big shiny red buttons so appealing.